Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Council's Cabinet, which will be webcast. Before we start these proceedings, may I bring to your attention some housekeeping matters. Please, will you all councillors make sure that they are able to participate in the meeting in a way that prevents them from being distracted, if at all possible. Please, will you also turn off your microphone when you are not speaking and make sure that your mobile voices turned at least to silent, please. Secondly, health and safety. There are no planned fire alarm exercises this afternoon. If the fire alarm goes off, please do exit out of the door, turn left and muster out in the car park. Thank you. Right, okay, we move to item number 1, apologies. I believe we have apologies from the leader, Councillor Dreen. Tracy gives her apologies as she has a peer review, and Anna Coles is substituting. Thank you very much, Anna. And I also believe that Giles is not with us today. Yep. Okay, right. Moving on to number 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest in respect of the items on the agenda today? Okay, I have one. I'm a non-remunerated board member of the Plymouth Freeport Board. Thank you. Okay, next one. The minutes of the last meeting. Has anybody got any issues with the minutes of the last meeting? Show of hands, please. All good? I do. I'll sign those off. Okay, Jimmy. Right, moving on to number 4, questions from the public. We have no questions from the public today. Chair's urgent business. I have no urgent business today. And we go on to leaders' announcements. Briefly, with regards to Plymouth and South Devon Freeport, it's the flagship and a highly ambitious programme to create thousands of high-quality jobs and play a crucial part in the post-COVID-19 recovery in Plymouth, helping to build back better, driving clean growth and a contribution to the levelling up agendas. The Freeport model uses a simplified tax and custom benefits aimed at attracting new and expanding businesses, as well as attracting foreign direct investments. In addition to this, the government is also providing £25 million of seed capital, which needs to be locally matched to unlock the site infrastructure, such as site preparation, groundworks, roads and transportation infrastructure. The Plymouth South Devon Freeports will supercharge the southwest economy by building on our region's unique national capabilities in marine, defence and space to form a globally impactful clusters and a UK innovation superpower. Our outstanding location means that Freeport is a prime for growing marine autonomy, renewables and innovative businesses. Our Freeport represents a unique opportunity to level up, address historical challenges and leverage new and exciting opportunities to transform the economy of Plymouth and South Devon through 3 key objectives. Firstly, create a national hub for trade and investment. Secondly, promote regeneration and job creation. And thirdly, create a hotbed of innovation. Okay, in summary, our Plymouth and South Devon Freeport will enable new employers and new employment land to be brought forward at 3 sites. One is Southyard, the second is Langage and third is Sherford. It will also support a new £30 million innovation centre at Oceans Gate and provide a major expansion plan for Princess Yachts, including £29 million investment from the local authorities and leverage an additional £250 million from private sector investment, and this should be delivering 3,500 jobs. Okay, we're moving on now then to Cabinet members' updates. Okay, Cabinet members, are you ready for your updates? Nothing yourself, Bill. James, yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick one. Our Climate Connections website has now gone live. The purpose of the website is to engage the residents of Plymouth, as well as businesses and organisations to contribute to our action of net zero by 2030, and to make a call to action to make as many people get involved as possible in that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Rebecca.
Thank you. So I just wanted to give a brief update on what we've done recently with council tax rebate schemes, because this is the sort of thing that doesn't get talked about anywhere else. We obviously had the money that came from central government earlier on in the year, which was the £150 energy rebate scheme, and that scheme was completed at the end of November, and in total almost 16 million was paid out to over 106,000 eligible households in bands A to D. Every eligible household received a £150 payment, either by bank transfer, cash payment, or a credit towards their council tax. Some of those were done as a cash voucher where we didn't have details for people, and a number of those were due to expire by the end of November, so they've been cancelled and those people have had it credited to their council tax account instead. So everybody that was eligible for that £150 has received it, which I think is a really important thing to share. But then we also had the council tax discretionary rebate fund with a fund of £556,500, and that's also been completed. And we ended up deciding that eligible households who receive some form of reduction in bands E to H would qualify for that, so that essentially everybody in the city who is in receipt of some sort of council tax discount was helped, because we also topped up all those in A to D who receive council tax support with an additional payment as well. So I just think that's a really good news story. Our team delivered that money really effectively, and we ensured that those who are most vulnerable at a time where cost of living is increasing rapidly were in receipt of the financial support that government gave them. So I think that's a really positive story, and we were able to get that money out really effectively. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So you can confirm now that we have distributed all of the money that the government put forward for the support?
Yeah.
What's the total figure of that?
Oh, now you're asking. So it was, hang on, bear with me. Sorry, I just closed my notes. Hang on, nearly there.
Sorry about that.
No, it's totally fine. I was like in a big swish of closing it. So we had an initial £16 million with the £150 scheme, and then the second scheme was just over another £500,000. So, you know, between 16 and 17 million pounds worth of support from central government directly to residents of Plymouth, which was has been distributed by the council.
Right, that's really good news. Good news. It's nearly £17 million to the pockets of people in Plymouth that need it. Well done. Thank you. On to Pat.
Thank you. Through you. So the first announcement is the MPO funding. So we've received quite a substantial sum over the next 3 years, which will keep our culture, leisure and heritage projects going. The second announcement is I have mentioned in previous cabinet meetings about the work I want to do with community groups. I'm pleased to announce that today we've agreed a way forward with Nudge and also Firestone on their projects. We just got a few little bits to cross off with them. Once they're done, we'll be signing contracts with them. And the final one I'd like to say a big thank you to all the teams under my portfolio. They've been working extremely hard, finishing off last year's updates and what have you, and preparing for next year. And we have an exciting programme to put out for next year. Thank you.
Good update, Pat. Thank you very much. So well done. On to yourself, John.
Thank you, Chair. I have one good news announcement about one of our staff. Senior practitioner Lydia Libby from our operational adult safeguarding team has just won a national award at the annual National Safeguarding Adults Board's Excellence Awards. In a section with large number of nominations, Lydia was crowned Partnership Champion for her work in a role that sees her support other agencies and people leading complex lives, often with coexistent issues of poor mental health, homelessness, substance dependency and self-neglect. Lydia was described as someone who goes about their work with humility, goes beyond the statutory safeguarding remit and touches a range of professional fields, largely concerning extremely vulnerable individuals at high levels of risk who would undoubtedly come to harm without the interventions that she supports so ably. So I thought that was worthy of noting, and I'm sure Anna and others have already sent their congratulations. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that, John. That it really is good to not only be recognised internally, but to be recognised externally as well. Some accolade, and well done, well done. Thank you very much. I have one other additional piece of good news, which has come through to us. We've just been awarded under the Regulators Pioneer Fund £850,000 to develop a new regulatory framework for the operation of marine autonomous systems. And this will support the Freeport and our wider work in Ocean Futures. So another good score for the team on bid work. Thank you very much. Right. I now move on to number 8, which is month 7 finance monitoring report. Okay. This report sets out the revenue monitoring position of the council forecast to the end of the financial year 22-23 as of October this year, period 7. We are now reporting an overspend of £4.1 million. And bear in mind, the last month's report, we reported an overspend of £5.991 million. So this is an improvement of £1.88 million on the deficit that we had. I said that this position would improve, and it has, and I'm confident that it will continue to improve. It has been said before, if we can get to the third quarter, December's report, at below £3 million, we'll be in a very strong position for the final push through the last quarter of this financial year. We should not overlook the £6 million of non-controllable costs this year that we've incurred. And 3.3 million of that relates to energy price inflation, for example. We've also got the impact of the COVID-19 legacy costs in adult and children's social care and the number of people requiring emergency bed and breakfast accommodation within Plymouth. We'll continue to work hard to achieve a balanced position by the end of March, and I would like to thank all officers and Cabinet colleagues and thank them for their efforts to date. This is a huge achievement in itself, and considering the starting position where we were earlier on this year. My recommendation for everybody is the Cabinet to note the forecast revenue monitoring position as at period 7 with a current deficit of £4.1 million. Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we now move on to corporate plan performance. Item number 9. As Cabinet member responsible for the performance management, I am pleased to provide the second of the corporate plan performance reports this year, covering the period July to September 2022, or the latest available data. The report is provided to a Cabinet to update you on the performance of the Council in terms of progress in delivering against the corporate plan. This was discussed at performance and finance scrutiny last week, and I'm happy to reflect feedback from that discussion today if so required. The performance report provides an opportunity to recognise improving and strong performance, but it must be set against the context in which the Council and its partners are currently working. We all appreciate that these are very trying times for the City, Council and its residents, and the financial challenges that we face are unprecedented. But we're still working hard to improve performance and deliver better services to our residents. That said, there are some really positives in this report. The employment rate in the City has seen a 2.2% increase from the quarter 4 21-22. The latest data for quarter 22-23 showing us at 77.7%. Plymouth had a lot higher employment rate than the rest of the country, which the current average across the country is 75.5%. So that's 2.2% above the rest of the country. In real terms, it's an increase of the number of people in employment in Plymouth from 126,900 in the 12 months to March 2023 to 131,200 in the 12 months to June 2023. and 22. There have been further reductions in the percentage of repeat referrals into children's social care. Whilst the percentage looks currently small, this actually means 68 fewer repeat referrals in the 12 months to the end of Q2. This is a better level than both our statistical neighbours and the English average, and shows the impact on our service is making on children's lives. Given the challenges we face, you would not expect this report to be entirely positive, and the report itself highlights some performance challenges which we would like to continue to address. The rate of children on multiple child protection plans increased slightly in Q2 and is not achieving our target. Whilst this represents a small change in quarter, the overall performance in this area is of concern, and the service is working hard to ensure that this improves going forward. And sickness rates have increased in Q2. These figures are inclusive of the COVID-19 sickness, which, along with cold and flu-like viruses, was one of the main reasons for the short-term sickness increase in Q2. This is of concern and was raised at scrutiny last week, and I was able to assure them that we are taking steps to tackle this. An action plan has been put into place which should review policy and procedures, proactive case management, and ensuring training is available to all managers to support them in managing sickness. The other questions raised at scrutiny was regarding the financial impact of our early cessation of the garden waste collections. Whilst this was a tough decision to make, we are facing very serious financial position, which is largely due to the national issues far beyond our control. And we act as decisively as we possibly can if we were to be in any chance of balancing the books by the end of this financial year. We estimated that stopping collections, we did save around £200,000. I'm asking Cabinet to note this relatively positive plan and this positive paper and report, and I will pause there to invite any comments from colleagues before we move forward. James.
Thank you. It's just a quick one on page 20 in the pack on the household waste sent for recycling, reuse or composting. Although it's been an improvement since Q1, we are still under target. So is that to be expected for this time of year? And if so, and if not, what work is being undertaken to try and increase and improve that number?
Through you, Chair, is that, sorry, Councillor, is that page 20 of the pack or of the report?
Page 20 of the pack, page 6 of the plan.
Yeah, could I come in there? I'll come back to Councillor Stoneman on that once I've got the right page open. If you're okay with that, Councillor Stoneman, post the meeting and give you an update.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, and we'll get back later. Rebecca.
I've just got a question of clarity, if I may. Page 4 of the report and 18 of the pack, it talks about council tax collected, and I just wanted to see whether the figure that is there in green is the figure to date rather than the sort of equivalent figure over the year, because it's obviously 55% rather than 96. I'm assuming that's a figure to date. Yeah, that's fine. I was just double checking, just because otherwise that looks a bit like we're behind target. I was just checking.
Through you, Chair, I mean, I think it's up to September. We'll confirm that, but there's been further improvement since that point.
Yes, John.
Can I ask a question about children with multiple child protection plans? obviously we don't want children to be in a position where they have to have these plans, but if there are children with these issues and problems, then it's better that they're being detected and supported. So, you know, is a rising figure. We're above the national average and it's gone up since the first quarter. But, you know, finding things and dealing with is sometimes better than not, just remains hidden. So I don't know if there's any view on that, whether Sharon Muldoon is able to give me any clarification.
Through you, Chair.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor. Sharon's not available today due to Ofsted being in at the moment. I think there is an issue around multiple protection plans, and I think the question is how long those plans are in place, when do they stop, and then you know, are children subject to repeat plans? We'll need to get a little bit more information for you, and we can provide that outside of the meeting if that's okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any more questions, please? Okay, we'll move on to consider that as noted. Moving on in the agenda now, on to item 10. This is the Plymouth Habitat Banking Vehicle.
Well, I'm very pleased to present to you today a proposal to set up a habitat banking vehicle for Plymouth. This is an innovative proposal that will place Plymouth at the cutting edge of work to capture the benefits of the new emerging green finance markets. It is proposed in the papers before you to establish a habitat banking vehicle, otherwise known as an HBV. The purpose is to deliver a local solution to the new duties set out within the Environment Act of 2021 in relation to biodiversity net gain, which will come into force in autumn of 2023. The new duty will drive a new market where biodiversity units can be created and sold. As a result of the new duty in the Environment Act, developer contributions in their current form related to local green space will discontinue. Now, without developing an HBV which aligns with the new duties, there is an estimated loss of 328,000 annual income for PCC to enhance the environment for people and nature. The business case sets out the opportunity to proactively respond to the new requirements for biodiversity net gain, to develop a new sustainable revenue stream and business model that will enhance our green and blue spaces and maximise the benefits for our communities. Now, the options analysis within the business case recommends the establishment of an HBV at arm's length to PCC as a preferred approach. This is because it maximises the benefits available at the lowest risk to PCC and delivers the most viable operating model. The recommendations presented to you are as follows. Number one, approve the principle of creating a habitat banking vehicle as set out in the business case. Item two, delegate to the strategic director of place the approval to work to scope pilot sites and associated background infrastructure required to trial a habitat banking approach as set out in the business case. Item three, approve the recommendation that details of implementing the HBV, including the scope of services, financial structuring, contracting and governance arrangements, including appointing directors, to be brought back for cabinet decision as soon as possible, hopefully within 12 months. And finally, item number 4 is to approve the business case. Now, I would, in a moment, like to hand over to the officers to provide a little more detail on the key points about the HBV, and then we will open it up for questions. But I'd like to thank the officers for the amazing work that they've done on this project, because it really does take a lot of getting your head around. And, you know, I can appreciate how much effort has gone into this, so thank you to the officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Kat, I take it you'd like to speak?
Thank you. We just thought it might be useful, and apologies that we had to put so many papers with this one, but it is it's very new and a bit of a complex one. So I thought it would be very quickly worth just running through how the new habitat banking vehicle works, because it is a bit different from any model we've got at the moment. So the basic premise of the new HPV is that it will have a new product in the form of a biodiversity unit that can be created and sold. So it's a new product, if you like. And a biodiversity unit isn't a standard, one hectare of woodland is 1 unit. It's a very complicated calculator, but it is set nationally by DEFRA. So we can very clearly pick out what biodiversity unit is and how we create it. And the way it would work is currently with Section 106, a developer would have an impact on biodiversity. They would then provide some funding, and then that impact would be mitigated. In this model, you basically get in a position where the biodiversity is created in advance. So that is a big step forward in terms of making sure that the impacts of development are actually mitigated ahead of time. So we would basically, number one, take funding from external private investors to create biodiversity units by investing that money in habitat restoration. That money would be invested in the habitat banking vehicle, and those habitat units would be created by enhancing our own land. We would then sell through the HPV those biodiversity units to developers who would be required to have at least a 10% net gain in biodiversity in line with the new requirements in the Environment Act. So basically the market is being developed nationally because of that requirement. The money from developers then go back into the habitat banking vehicle when those units are sold and are used to repay the investment from the private investors. But it is worth noting that the biodiversity will be a per unit cost that not only pays for that habitat to be enhanced, so capital amount, it will also have a very long-term maintenance allowance within it as well. So in addition to paying back the investors, the amount we get for each unit would enable a management of that site for a minimum of 30 years, and we're actually looking at longer than that through an endowment policy. So hopefully that gives a really concise run through of how this new market would work. And the reason we want to do it ourselves in Plymouth is because we have looked at options of engaging with national organisations who are starting to do this, but they're only really interested in rural areas and big sites where they can maximise profit. What we don't want to happen is the development industry in Plymouth having to buy units very far away from Plymouth and therefore losing that biodiversity and all the benefits to people out of the city because the impact happens in the city, but the biodiversity units are created outside of it. So the proposal is to set this up so that we can retain nature within the city, the development impacts are mitigated locally, and because we will be driving this, we'll also be looking at maximising the economic and the social benefits of this new market as well. So hopefully that is helpful in explaining the proposal and why we're hoping to do this in Plymouth. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I do have one question myself. Have we got sites already designated within Plymouth that would meet our habitat banking vehicles needs and demands?
Yeah, so we've been really fortunate. We've had funding through the Future Parks Accelerator programme to look into this. What we're proposing in the papers before you today is we start with 3 pilot sites so that we can really test this. So that's Canwoods, Hanwoods, and the part of Chelsea Meadows, which isn't designated for the solar farm. But we have done a needs assessment across a lot of our sites, and we think there's at least another 29 that could be brought into this process at a later date if we deemed it successful. And we've really focused our investigations on sites that are already have some nature value. So they're not sites that are going to conflict with anything in the joint local plan around housing or employment.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I, supplementary, what will they actually look like to the local population, and which of the 3 Canwoods are we talking about here in Plymouth? Because there are 3 canned woods in Plymouth.
Yeah, so in terms of what they'd look like, each of the sites have been reviewed for their current biodiversity value, and a lot of the work that will be proposed will actually be increasing the value of the existing habitat types. So the way that you can raise a unit is either creating something new or enhancing existing habitat. So for example, if you've got woodland in poor condition, you can create biodiversity units by increasing that to good condition. So hopefully what local residents would see will be sites with enhanced nature that are really well managed, because we'd have a long-term sustainable income stream. And because we're delivering this, we want to maximise the social benefit. So we'd want to make sure that other infrastructure within those sites were also at good quality. So things like paths, information. So we wouldn't be looking at, wholesale changing the look of these sites, but just in really enhancing what we've got.
Thank you very much for that. Councillors, any further questions? Rebecca.
So I've very helpfully had some of my questions answered when the papers came out, but I thought it'd just be worth noting the questions that I asked, just so that we had something, and they've sort of been answered already, but I'm just going to say them on the record just so that we've looked into it. So one of them's partly been answered, but obviously because this is a replacement for Section 106, which communities would have seen who were in a vicinity to a development, I was interested in how close to developments we would aim to create these habitat banking areas. So for example, if a big housing development is happening on one part of the city, would some of the benefit, is the aim that some of the benefit would be in the vicinity of that development rather than the other side of Plymouth? And the other question I was interested in is, well, I think actually the other question Mark has answered in terms of pilot sites and where they are, but I just think that link between the local communities with Section 106 is important, because existing policy means that residents, Section 106 is spent in the very near vicinity to a housing development or a business development. So I'd just be interested to hear, I suppose, that put publicly in this meeting if I can.
Any response?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so obviously we've got 3 pilot sites at the moment where we've tried to spread those across the city as much as we can in an attempt that we could do that as development come forward and put the biodiversity unit enhancements in places close to people. Obviously with this process you're creating habitats in advance of developments as well. But if this really works, and once we bring more sites in, we would have a really good spread across the city, and be looking to enhance those sites so that all of the city can benefit from this. And this is really the key reason why we want to set a habitat banking vehicle up in Plymouth, because if we didn't do this locally, the likelihood is impacts from developments would actually be mitigated much further afield, where there are big habitat banks being set up in rural areas. So it is a really key point that Councillor Smith points out, that the reason, one of the key reasons we want to do this locally is to make sure those benefits stay local for people when we've got development in the city.
Can I just ask, are there other schemes in the country at the moment operating?
Yeah, there's a few being developed. Environment Bank are the biggest, I suppose, sort of commercial, and we did contact one of those to ask them how it would work. Would they engage with Plymouth? I think because we've got urban sites which are more difficult to manage, and we're not sort of swathes of countryside where you could do this easily, they never even came back to, if I'm honest, because I don't think the scale that we're looking at was of interest to them.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question from Pat.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'd just like to ask, so I've had a number of inquiries recently from waste disposal people, especially in the skip business, who are working with developers. Their cost for tipping has escalated quite considerably because they're now having to separate soil from rubble. Is this anything to do with the habitat scheme that you were just describing here? Are we getting this all separated so the charges and the private investment you're bringing in is done in this way?
So what we're talking about is specifically related to the new duty in the Environment Act and the requirement for all developers, so house builders, anyone who's looking for planning permission, to deliver a net gain in biodiversity. The reason the government is looking at biodiversity units and this enhancement approach is, one, so that the impact of development is mitigated ahead of time, but also to make sure that the developers can actually meet their requirement for 10% net gain in biodiversity, which isn't always possible on site. I think the waste issue is probably separate to this, because this is very much about habitat enhancement, creating biodiversity units, and then bringing in investors to help us do that and paying them back through the money that we gain from investors for selling those. So I think probably the waste thing is a bit different.
Yeah, we'll talk further about it outside the unit. I would like to understand how it all works. Thank you.
Good answer. Thank you very much, Kat. I've got no. That's it. Right. Any more questions, please? Okay, we move forward now. There's a vote required here, and the vote is for one, the Cabinet approves the principle of creating a habitat land banking vehicle, HBV, as set out in the business case. Two, delegates to the Strategic Director of Place the approval of work, to work to scope pilot sites and associated background infrastructure required to trial a habitat banking approach as set out in the business case. Thirdly, approves recommendation that the details of implementing the HBV include the scope of services, final structuring, contracting and governance arrangements, including appointing directors, to be brought back to the Cabinet for decision as soon as practicable, but certainly within 12 months. And finally, 4, approves the business case. Right, so that's all 4 together. I take it, have we got a challenge here? Have we got a vote? All votes? Right, unanimous? All 4. All 4. Yeah. Okay, you're approving all 4 of those steps in one. Okay, lovely. Thank you. Recorded? Lovely. Okay, and now we finally move on to the business case for the procurement of domestic abuse services. Councillor Patel.
Thank you. So the current domestic abuse services it has been in place for 10 years under sanctuary housing, and has gone a long way towards tackling DA or DV within Plymouth and supporting the victims. Sanctuary have worked throughout the pandemic to increase their capacity and ensure they keep open and accessible for people feeling violence. The current contract for Plymouth's domestic abuse service is coming to an end, and we need to go out to the market to secure new services and contract. Domestic abuse, as I'm sure you're all aware, has a devastating impact on individuals, families and communities, and can cause lifelong trauma. And it is vital that people who experience domestic abuse can be supported to be safe and have the opportunity to recover from trauma. Plymouth has demonstrated a long-standing commitment to addressing this issue and other issues surrounding domestic abuse. It is our ambition in Plymouth to be a trauma-informed city and to learn from those that have lived the experience of abuse. And we have listened to the people in the city who have experienced domestic abuse, including evidence gathered by our Plymouth Male Violence Against Women and Girls Commission, led by Councillor Smith here, which has helped inform the service that we would like to deliver. And the business case to procure a new service comes at a time when our new Domestic Abuse Act has come into effect and places new strategy duties on us as a Tier 1 authority.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. So I'm Emma Crowther. I'm one of the strategic commissioning managers for the city. And Laura Griffiths is the commissioning officer that wrote the paper and is leading the work in this area. So we're seeking permission to procure a new domestic abuse service for the city and also to delegate the contract award to the strategic director for people. And just to pick up on Councillor Patel's point about the new statutory duties, they place a new range of requirements on us as a local authority, the most relevant of which for this business case are to do with the safe accommodation, provision of safe accommodation for victims and their children, and also relevant support for victims and their children. So that's primarily the purpose of this business case. The paper does highlight two risks to us being able to achieve those statutory duties, one of which is the pressures on our housing and homelessness system and the difficulties in securing accommodation at the minute. We're very acute to that and we will plan for that. The other risk is around the financial situation. We are seeking to procure a 10-year contract to provide stability for the service, but the service is funded via various partners and we at the moment are unable to secure the funding for that full duration. That's not unusual. But we will be seeking to plan early and to mitigate against any possible financial risks as we go through the process. I'm just going to hand over to Laura.
Thanks, Emma. So yeah, the new service essentially is a sort of an attempt to bring us in line with statutory duties. It's a development and an extension of what we currently have to increase capacity. So it will be a kind of a broader look at our housing options and our accommodation options for people who experience domestic abuse. It will be to expand our provision around support for those people. We're also going to be looking at a number of other opportunities around peer support and more community-based programmes, community outreach, and also to start having a commissioned behaviour change programme for people who cause harm. And that's been really important as a part of this work. And also the therapeutic counselling, that's something else that's part of our statutory duty to provide as part of this service. So that's just to give you a flavour of some of the things that we'll be scoping out and co-designing with some of our partners and colleagues across the city.
So just to clarify, can I understand that we are looking to provision the very best service that we possibly can in Plymouth? Thank you. That's all I ask. Councillors.
I think it's just worth saying again, as we've said time and time again, that one of the strengths I think of Plymouth is the partnership working that we have in delivering these services, and I think Emma and Laura would both be testimony to that and the work that they do across organisation and in the city. And I think, you know, this business case will be continuing in that direction. So, you know, this isn't a wholesale change. This is essentially just recommissioning some of the existing work that is already done. Who delivers that will be part of the conversation. But I think it's also really worth just saying there's no threat to this service, is there? If we go ahead with this, it continues. It's part of what we deliver as a council, and this is just that kind of progressive, let's recommission it because the contracts come to an end rather than there's any conversation here of whether or not we carry on doing this. So I just, again, for the public, it's just worth saying this is very much a core part of our delivery work as council, and we would continue to do that. And that certainly has my full backing, and the team are well across the piece of work and join in very closely with the Vaughan Commission as well. So just to reassure people that this service it'll be seamless to the average user of the service, I think it's worth saying.
Lovely, thank you very much, and I wish you every success on your journey. Okay, we will move forward now to recommendations and the vote required. And the vote is for two parts here. Firstly is to approve the business case and the procurement process to commission a new domestic abuse service. And the second is delegate the decision and the award of the contract to the strategic director for people. You certainly can.
I don't want to put anybody on the spot here, but it's got the name of Craig McCardle on the papers. I just felt we should note that we've noticed that so that nobody thinks that we haven't read the documents properly, because I'm assuming there's a change with that going forward, or there might not be, but can we just clarify that?
It's an error on the template that hasn't caught up yet, so it is absolutely, it's Anna Coles now, so yeah.
Just for people to be reassured that we do the detail, I thought it was just worth putting that on record, so thank you.
Noted. Thank you very much. So I'll quickly reiterate that. So the vote required is firstly to approve the business case and the procurement process to commission a new domestic abuse service, and secondly to delegate the decision and to award the contract to the Strategic Director for People. Have a vote for both of those together, please. All approved? Lovely. Thank you. Right, do the papers. Thank you very much. That concludes today's business. Thank you.